And hence today in this class I'll be discussing about legislative reporting after uh, we discuss about the working of Indian Parliament. As I have already told you, that legislative reporting is a very important component of political journalism. In order to uh, write an analytical political piece, it's very, very important also to understand the political system, right? And the working and function of Indian political system is very, very important. So here, basically, we are going to discuss about Indian parliamentary system. So when you talk about the parliament, parliament, the word parliament derives its origin from the French word that is called the parlor. That means talk. Okay, so it is also talking shop. Okay, Dicey has defined parliament as a talking shop. So it's a parlor where we can talk. So it is also related to that public sphere. It is related to the concern of the public, and issues of national importance, issues of international importance are discussed in parliament, right? So any talk related to the issues of national importance, local importance, international importance have got a space in parliament. So it is debated, discussed, consensus, also conflicted upon in the parliament. So parliament also constitute a very vibrant public sphere in that way. Okay, so you can actually relate to the talk of the parliament integrated with this theory of public sphere. Okay, we also have another dimension to discuss about public sphere, that is civil society dimension. I'm not going to deviate my lecture to public sphere because we will be very concrete today, and we'll be focusing upon how parliamentary system in India works. So when we talk about parliamentary system, all of you know that it comprises of two houses, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, right? That is also Council of States, and Rajya Sabha is Council of State and House of People, right? So you see the whole constituent of the parliament is such that Lok Sabha has a privileged position over Rajya Sabha because it has got the numerical superiority. Numerical superiority. You get to see the composition of the Lok Sabha. It consists of 552 members. Now it is consist of 545, but basically it could be consist of 552 members, right? 550 from the constituencies, from the state constituencies, and you see 20 from the union territories, and another two Anglo-Indian member, which could be elected by the president if he finds or she finds that uh, the community is not properly represented, that Anglo-Indian community hasn't got any representation in the Lok Sabha. Right. So in that case, we get to see this numerical strength of Lok Sabha. There is also a delimitation commission, which is important to understand. The role of delimitation commission, you actually see that Lok Sabha, the member of the Lok Sabha are elected by uh, that is direct election, that is a secret ballot process. Okay, secret ballot process and through direct election, and that is through adult suffrage. Once you attain the 18 years, then you can eligible to vote, right, for MLA. So now you see that that is a direct elections. It is through which you can actually choose your representative, and also it is the seats are selected and also divided on the basis of the population in a constituency, and this population also keeps on fluctuating and the changing, right? Hence there is a delimitation commission which is established to understand the number of population in one constituencies and the changes over the years, and also demarcation of the territories, demarcation of the constituencies from where the candidates will be selected to Lok Sabha. Okay, so that is the role of delimitation commission, and hence we actually see that people attaining 25 years of age and become an Indian citizen can be eligible to contest election, eligible to contest for Lok Sabha election, right? But there are also some of the parameters which can lead to disqualification of the members if he is or she is of an unsound mind, right? Or discharged insolvent, he is not a citizen of India, can be disqualified to become the member of Lok Sabha. So these are some of the terms, conditions, norms you need to know to understand the structure of the parliament. And parliament is a constitute of two houses. And we are now discussing about the which house? Lower house. We are discussing about the lower house. So now you actually see that parliament has, Lok Sabha has certain privileges. Suppose it has privileges over money bill. So over we talk about discussion over bills, right? We talk about money bills here. Money bill can be introduced only in the Lok Sabha. You all know it cannot be introduced in Rajya Sabha, right? So Lok Sabha has the prerogative to even introduce the money bill, right? When you talk about, yeah, what happened? सुनाई नहीं दे रहा है because of, but you see this mic is also on. Okay, I'll increase the volume of the mic. You can also reduce the. Is it fine now? But I don't think so. Is it fine? I think voice is of similar intensity. I can't see the increase in the voice, but no, you don't need to call because there is a break in this lecture. You don't need to call anyone. Okay, so it is fine. So you can reduce the speed of the fan. हाँ थोड़ा सा कम कर दो तो it might be audible also, right? हाँ हाँ पीछे इतना जोर से it makes lot of noise those ये fans no it makes lot of noise. Yeah, come. So what we were discussing about yeah. अच्छा ठीक है अभी ये फैन के ऊपर डिस्कशन मत करो क्योंकि हमारे इधर हमारे पास डिस्कस करने के लिए बहुत सारा टॉपिक्स है और आइडियाज भी है तो वो अभी छोड़ दो तो so when we talk of yeah the power and function of Lok Sabha, it's important. So what Lok Sabha can do, right? So it can have the very important privilege to introduce the money bill and also take a decision over the money bill. So money bill, if it is passed by the Lok Sabha and uh, and Rajya Sabha has some disagreement also, which will not be considered. Okay, so on money bill, Lok Sabha has the prerogatives, but the other constitutional amendments and the ordinary bills, you get to see the prerogatives and the privileges of both the house to give consent. Okay, so in terms of money bills, we also get to see there is a process. Okay, Rajya Sabha has some role in terms of discussing the financial statement, but it cannot give. It can give some recommendation, but it cannot reject a money bill which is passed by the Lok Sabha. So money bill is introduced in the Lok Sabha, but any ordinary bill can also be introduced in Rajya Sabha. But money bill cannot be introduced in Rajya Sabha. Okay, it can be introduced in the Lok Sabha, so it will go through a process like first reading, second reading, third reading, right? So in the very first reading, the very principle of the bills are being discussed. The principles, the policies, the ethos of the bills are being discussed in the very first reading. In the second reading, you get to see the bill has been scrutinized by different committees. So there are committees, standing committees are there are ad hoc committees. Now, ad hoc committees and standing committees will discuss the bill clause by clause. Okay, and they will approve and make some recommendations and also make some amendments if there is any amendments required. Okay, and in the third reading, some sub clauses are included, amendments are being included, and bill is basically made ready for pass. Okay, so you get to see that this is the process how bill is ready for making a pass from the Lok Sabha to Rajya Sabha. Once it is passed from the Lok Sabha, it is got the consent. Hmm. And majority consent, two-third member of the Lok Sabha has signed the bill, then it is passed to Rajya Sabha. Okay, for their assent, their consent. Then in Rajya Sabha also it will be supposed to be passed by two-third of the member present, and then it will again pass to president. Once president gives his assent, it will become a bill, it will become an act, it will become a legislation. So Lok Sabha is basically responsible to make and unmake of all the laws and legislations. So it is a legislative body, it is responsible for making and unmaking of the legislation. And Lok Sabha can also hold the executive accountable and responsible for the activities it is conducted, for the state affairs that has been conducted. So it is also, it can control the executive, it is making the executive accountable for the activities it is conducted. In that way, it can exercise control over the executive. And you see, Council of Minister is also accountable to Lok Sabha. When you talk about the Council of Minister cabinet, is accountable to Lok Sabha for the activities, for the conduct of the business at the same time. Because Lok Sabha has the right to put up a vote of no confidence and also vote of censure along with the questions to make any bill null and void, even dissolve the council of ministers and dissolve the cabinet. But that power is not conferred to Rajya Sabha. So Rajya Sabha can also criticize the government. It has some provision of exercise of power, but that power could be exercised through question, through criticizing, through adjournment motion. Huh. Adjournment motions, they disrupt the normal activities. Okay, and also bring a matter of public concern, immediate concern to the floor. So that could be done by Rajya Sabha. But Rajya Sabha cannot even go for no confidence motion, cannot implement a no confidence motion, cannot put forward a no confidence motion against the cabinet, against the council of minister. But Lok Sabha can put a no confidence motion against the council of minister and make the council of minister or the cabinet dissolve. Okay. In that case, you actually say सरकार तो गिर जाएगा ना. So you get to see the power of Lok Sabha, and hence it is important to understand also the power of the speaker. So speaker, we when you talk about the Lok Sabha, we also see that our Lok Sabha, our parliamentary system is a replica of British parliamentary system. But there are certain differences of Indian parliamentary system and British parliamentary system. And the speaker, which is being elected uh, as the head of the Lok Sabha, as a presiding officer, is also a bit the in terms of power and the privilege which he enjoys a bit different from the speaker of the British parliamentary system. So you get to see that our speaker is also a member of a party. Once he becomes the speaker or she becomes the speaker, he or she won't cease to be the member of the party. But in British parliamentary system, the speaker will cease to be the member of the party once he becomes the speaker. And we also see that there are certain conventions which we have adopted from Westminster model, but not all the conventions could be adopted, as we follow that rule of law and we have a written constitution. So the power of Lok Sabha is also limited in that sense. It is limited and it is constitutional. It is defined, but the power of British parliamentary system is not defined properly because Britain doesn't have a constitutional system, right? So it is based on the historicity of the convention, history of the conventions that has been followed over the years. Okay, so power is indefinite. So in that way, we can get to see certain differences of Indian parliamentary system with the British parliamentary system, right? And apart from that, what we get to see is that when we talk about the role of speaker, speaker has the vast responsibility. Okay, he has vast responsibility and vital responsibility in the floor of Lok Sabha because he is the one will be presiding over. He'll summon a session, and he's responsible for maintaining the decorum of the floor of the house, right? And usually the senior most person of the party is elected as the speaker. Hmm. And you also see that we have a term of the speaker. Hmm. And even the member of the Lok Sabha has also a term of 5 years. But member of Rajya Sabha doesn't have a fixed term, you see. So 6 years is being limited, and after 2 years, one set of members will be retired. But you actually see that Rajya Sabha is a continuous process. Okay, but it reflects the whole political complexion of this federal union. So India is a federal country. So Rajya Sabha will reflect the political, that complexion of this federal unit, because Rajya Sabha represent these state assemblies. Okay, so Rajya Sabha will always speak in favor of the state issues, unlike the Lok Sabha. Okay, so any kind of issues come up relating to state, and the items and the subject in the state list are supposed to be of concern of Rajya Sabha. So Rajya Sabha is supposed to raise concern over the matters that are also dealing with the state list to certain extent. That is another power. But Parliament, you actually get to see, supposed to deal with the matter which are mentioned in the union list, the subject items which are mentioned in the union list. But if there is a transfer of certain items from the union to state list, then Rajya Sabha can also have a role to put a question. Okay, so you get to see that when you talk about the specificity of power of the speaker, specificity of power of the Lok Sabha, we get to see that speaker especially hold a very important power, because he is the cornerstone of the whole floor, and you see that he maintains the decorum. He is the custodian of rights and privileges of the members of the Lok Sabha. And also, Parliament itself is the symbol of freedom and liberty of the nation. You see, it is the freedom of speech. It is the symbol of freedom of speech. So, when you talk about right to speech, freedom of speech, you get to see it getting exercised in the Parliament, in the legislative body. Like, and hence, members of the Parliament have got certain privileges and immunity against the violation of their right to freedom of speech. Okay, and speaker is the custodian of the rights and privilege of the members of the parliament. Okay, now when we talk about the speaker's role here, he will also allot the time. He'll first preside the meetings, right? He will also summon the session. He will allot the time of speaking. Okay, he will take the questions. There is a question hour, question hour. So session started with the question hour. And there are certain questions in the question hour. Three types of questions could be put. One is start question. Another one is unstart question. And another one is short notice question. So in the start question, we get to see that reply and answer is sought after in oral form. And in unstart question, reply is sought after through written, a written submission on the table. And in short notice question, we get to see that reply is and in short notice question, we get to see that immediate question of immediate concern, that is immediate questions of national concern and public concern are being raised. Okay, and speaker has a role to admit the questions, which questions will be admitted, which question will be not admitted. So speaker will decide. Okay, so you get to see the speaker has a very important role in the floor of the Lok Sabha. And apart from that, the speaker also provide the safeguard and immunity. Okay, won't let anyone even disperse that too in the four wall of the house and to arrest someone. Even you see the 40 days session, no member of parliament is supposed to be arrested any kind of civil cases or civil conviction. Okay, and you get to see that there is also public gallery where there is an entry of the public person to see the debate and all, and the speaker will give the permission to make an entry into the public gallery, and he can also expel the people from the public gallery. Okay, if actually sees some kind of chaos. Okay, so like that way you see that there are some immunity which are also provided, because immunities which are provided to the members, and speaker is the custodian of the rights and privileges of the members of the parliament. Okay, and then what we actually see that apart from this very brief of the speakers and the Lok Sabha, we get to see the main function. Main function of the Lok Sabha is that it can um, make the bill, make the law, right? And there are list, union list, state list, concurrent list. So Parliament can make bills on subject which are enumerated in the union list. Okay, in terms of concurrent list, you get to see that if there is a matter of national importance, and if there is some issues related to this agreement and consensus, then power is given to parliament over the state assemblies to make the law. Okay, so in that way there are also distinctive power over the items, over the subject which are enumerated in the state list and union list and concurrent list. Then you actually see that it has some judicial power. Judicial power is given to Rajya Sabha as well as Lok Sabha in terms of deciding the jurisdiction of the chief judges and other judges, as well as the organization of this judicial court. Okay, so how many members could compose that organization, the court and the jurisdiction, the power, whether it is of 7 member, and with the legislation, with an amendment, the member of the judges have been increased to 10 even. Okay, so like that way you can actually see that the uh, uh, the jurisdiction of exercise of power and the privileges of the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha is different, but to certain extent there are similarity or equality of power, and there is a theory of equality which is also exercised in terms of the power they actually exercise. But money bill cannot be introduced. There is no power of Rajya Sabha over the money bill, and Rajya Sabha cannot even put a no confidence motion against the Council of Minister. But judicial power is similar. Control over the executive, indirectly Rajya Sabha can control the executive body. Okay, and Lok Sabha can have a direct control over the executive. Hmm. Because there are different committees. If you look at the role of the committees, no, there are standing committees, there are also ad hoc committees. Ad hoc committees are there after a particular period of time. Assigned task is being completed, that ad hoc committee will be dissolved. But when you talk about the standing committees, those are permanent committees. They will actually look after the activities of different ministers, different portfolios, different departments, how they are carrying forward, and the expenditure which are supposed to be spent, and the revenue which are being collected, tax which are being collected, are eligible to spend or not. So without getting consent from Rajya Sabha, the revenue and the tax which are being collected cannot be spent. Okay, and hence we see that there are some committees. We also have public account committee. We have committees like, you see, the estimate committees, public undertaking committees. These are some general committees, okay, which will look after the report of Comptroller and Auditor General about the expenditure which are being spent, which are supposed to be spent, hmm, and also the estimate of those expenditures, and if there is any administrative reform happen, the expenditure, the expenses, whether it is in right order or not, it is processed in a right way or not, will be looked after. And public undertaking committee will look after the autonomy and efficiency of public undertaking. Okay, and also the budget which is given to any public undertaking to carry out a task. Okay, so here, apart from these three committees, there are also other committees. You see the committees on petition, committees, rule committees are there. Okay, then committees on the subordinate legislation. There are also committees on the welfare of SC/ST. There are also committees on, you see, government assurance. There are committees on private member bills. The private member can also put up the bill. Okay, in Rajya Sabha as well as Lok Sabha, which are also scrutinized in the House by private member bill committees, the bill which are being put by private member. Okay, so here again we get to see the role of the pressure group. Hmm. So when you talk about the pressure group, when you talk about private members bill, we can also talk about the pressure group. Hmm. So pressure group is different from political party. Pressure group will not actually sit in this parliament to take part in debate discussion, right? So when you talk about the pressure group, this is of a different variety. So we have discussed about interest group, we have discussed about pressure group. You get to see that all interest group can be pressure group, but not all pressure group will be an interest group. So when you talk about the interest group represent like birds of similar feathers flock together. So they do have similarities of interest. The people of like-minded interest, of similar interest, will form an interest group. And this interest group can also put a pressure on the government. Hmm. And when you talk about those interest group, there is a little variation, little difference in the interest group and the pressure group. As I have already told you, they can interest group turn into pressure group. And also, you see, but there are certain interest group. There are all interest group turn into pressure group, but there are pressure groups which may not turn into interest group because they may not have a very distinct interest to fulfill. But when you talk about those interest group, they might have a distinct interest. Maybe on the basis of geography, there are some interest group, there are associations, student associations are also there, right? And they have a definite goal, definite interest to fulfill, right? And the development is the situation in the country, in the state. So on that plank they can have some interest to put a pressure, so they also moving forward to a pressure group. So like that way we can see, when you talk about these committees, we also have an understanding of the complexities of the association and the bodies and private bodies, public bodies, and their undertakings and their interest, which could be put into the floor and put up to the floor. Okay, and there is committee who look after those interests. Suppose committee on petition look after the petition whether it is complying with the rules of the petition or not. So petition are accepted from the pressure group, from the private bodies. Petition, that is grievances, any kind of grievances on policies, on programs of the government are accepted. Okay, now that committee on the petition will look after those the petitions, whether it is in right order, whether it is consistent with the rules which are set to define the petition or not. Okay, like that way. There is a committee on welfare of the SC/ST. They'll look after the welfare of SC/ST. There is a committee on government assurance. Many a time, government ministry department will give assurance. We'll do that, do this, right? So that committee will look after, scrutinize the information which government give to public, and the government actually assure public that we will do that, how far they have complied to their assurances. Okay, so there are committees which are constructed to look after the proceeding of the house and whether the uh, plan, policies, promises promises are being kept, plans are properly executed, programs are properly implemented or not. Okay. And when you talk about now the pressure group, we are a bit deviation. We discuss about it in a very brief way. But you understood about the policy committees. No, I'm not going that deep, because if you go that deep, it will also be boring. You will have some idea so that you can go for, like, reporting, legislative reporting, understand what legislative reporting, what is happening in the legislation. So this much information is sufficient for a journalist. You need to know, no, what is happening in the legislation, how a bill is being passed, okay, and what are the role of the committees, right? Because you need to know about the working of the system. Hmm? And hence this much information, very brief information, is sufficient. If you want to know more, then you can also study more about the role of each committees and duties, functions of each committees. Okay, and there are committees which will also determine the salary of the MPs. There are some committees which will determine the salary of the MLA and the MPs. There are also committees decide this residential allotment and housing and accommodation of the MPs and MLAs. Okay, and there is a committee look after the library. We also get to see that there is a parliamentary library, uh, which consists of lot of books and archives, and also you see lot of documents. So look after the archives, documents, and the library. There is also a committee. Okay, so you see, like that way we have select committees. We also have ad hoc committees and general committees. General committees are standing committees, and ad hoc committees are constituted for a period of time. Okay, and they look after the running of the affairs of the state, how it is being run, how budget is being spent, whether it is spent as per the demands which are being made and as per the clauses which are there in the provision. Okay, and now we see that there is also a call cut motion. We'll be discussing about pressure group later on. So there is a call cut motion. You know about cut motion? What is called cut motion? Cut motion is important to understand. Cut motion, when a demand is raised through a policy, through a program in the House. So, what political party can do? That is also important. How a political party is different from a pressure group, because political party can take part in making policies. Huh. And it is mandatory for them to make policies, to make program. They have this opportunity to make policies and the programs, and it is through which they develop their stake in decision making and in the government, in running of the state, right? So when you talk about the policy, so policy is being introduced, and each policy is also coming up with some of the grievances from the opposition, from other party, right? So in cut motion, what we get to see, it refers to cut the demand of the policy to certain extent through the grievances. Cut motion is that you raise a demand first, that is a demand for vote. We call about demand for vote. So in Lok Sabha, the demand for vote could be asked. That is a motion to demand for vote. When you introduce a bill, when there is a first reading, in the second reading, through the select committees, all the committees are also working simultaneously. So you read in the introduction of the bill, first reading is being made, where only the principles are being enumerated and discussed, only the principle of the bills. In the second reading, clause by clause is being discussed. What are the clauses which are there in the bill, right? And also seek for recommendations, and who actually, which body looks after this clause by clause recommendations and detailing of the bills. Okay, select committees, the committees which are being constituted. Okay, and then